All right, everybody has heard of Batgirl and Wonder Woman, but have you heard of the magician from Mars? There she is. How about Sally the Sleuth? Well, you will find them and many others by going back, way back into the history of female comic book characters, or, you know, by picking up this book. It is called The Spectacular Sisterhood of Superwoman, such a great title. And the Superwoman who pulled it all together for us is with us in studio this morning. Good morning to Hope Nicholson.
Hi, nice to be here.
All right, before we get started on the book, and I did love the book, it was fascinating, I learned so much. You probably get asked this, but I haven't had a chance to ask you. So, if you had a superpower, what would it be?
Oh gosh, I always say time travel because especially writing the history book, there's so many different eras I'd love to visit and fashions to look at. It would be absolutely amazing.
Okay, I love that. If you had a super name, what would it be? Do you know?
Oh, no. I'm not even going to go there.
Like,
you know,
Super Hope, I think, would actually work.
You know, there was a character in the 1930s called Super Anne. So, I mean, there is precedent for really lazy superhero names.
Super Anne?
Yeah.
Oh, well, there I go. All right. The book, let's start that. You said you go back in history. We start in the 1930s. It comes all the way up to present day. Have things changed for female comic book characters? And if so, in what way?
Oh, absolutely. I think in the beginning, female comic characters were kind of like this diverse range of things. No one knew what superheroes would be. And so a lot of the characters were like really vicious and really like bloodthirsty superheroes. And then things got really sanitized and then things kind of got pushed aside. And only, I think, in the recent 10 years has there been this big resurgence into female characters who, you know, aren't just cookie cutter the same superheroines.
Some of them were like nurses and journalists and detectives, people who are seeking truth.
Yeah.
In good fashion, I might point out. The 1940s was the golden age of comics. Introduced us to Miss Fury.
Oh, Miss Fury was great. So she was a socialite by day, and then by night she put on this like magical cat costume and then fought Nazis and punched them right in the face. It was great.
I know,
stuff.
in the cover of this, she's like jumping into the middle of like a Nazi war plan. She looks a lot like what we would imagine as Catwoman now.
Yeah, pretty much. Like, she did definitely have cat-inspired powers, but her creator was also a woman, Tarpe Mills, and she had a great, great interest in fashion, too. What I keep seeing throughout the history is that the intersections of comics and fashion keep coming up over and over again. I find that really fascinating to look at, too.
I did as well. Let's talk about what you just mentioned, and that is comic book characters who are written by women. More popular now, obviously, than it was a few decades ago. How has that evolved and changed their role?
Things have changed a lot. I think there was definitely a lot of women writing comics in the 1940s because there was the war. And so there was a lot of men who had left overseas and a lot of women took up the slack in the creative fields, which is pretty cool. So there's a publisher called Fiction House that was mostly female writers and artists. And I think that's something that kind of vanished. And then for years later, up until the resurgence in the 1970s with underground comics, women weren't really involved much in the field at all, but I make sure to highlight the ones who were in the book. And then in the last 20 years, especially with the big surge in digital access, so people could just make a comic and put it online, there's been so many more women getting in the field. And with TCAF happening this weekend, the Toronto Comic Arts Festival, like at least half of the participants are women, I think.
You know, it's very timely to talk about female comic characters because Wonder Woman is coming out.
Yes.
Lots of controversy. And she has been, you cite her in the book as being one of the most successful franchises because, you know, you see her on clothing and, you know, she's branded everywhere. We keep reinventing her. You know, there's a lot of debate whether or not she is actually a positive representation of a modern female. And I'd love your take on that.
That's a hard issue because a lot of people really, really loved Wonder Woman. And I like her sometimes, but I've never felt that same connection that other people have had. And I think it's because she has such a huge burden on her to be absolutely everything. She has to be perfect, but she can't be sexual. But she also has to be pretty to appeal to the boys. And so it's so much stuff to put on a character that no one knows really what to do with her. And so she shifts around so much. It's hard to know what her true character is. And I think that's kind of frustrating.
I mean, you've studied the history of characters like Wonder Woman, so do you like her better in the past or in the present?
Oh, I think she was really fun in her first appearances in the early 1940s. Like, there was this real big sense of fun and adventure and her just going on really silly stuff, and it was kind of nice when comics were allowed to be silly.
All right, I can't let you go without asking about some of these reboots. You know, having the conversation about comic books at our meeting yesterday, there's so many changes to, you know, male characters suddenly becoming females and a change to Miss Marvel. So what do you think of these reboots?
I think they're great for the most part because a lot of times they're addressing needs that weren't there before. Like for Ms. Marvel, she's taking the code name from a character in the 1970s who was created to be a feminist icon, but now she's a Muslim Pakistani teenager and still like dealing with like her parents, but also just like regular teenage stuff. So I think a lot of these reboots are made to address the need that people weren't seeing themselves in the comics before, and now they can, and they can see themselves in the characters that they grew up reading.
Great to talk to you and to flip through your book. I also enjoyed your work on Catbird with Margaret Atwood, her first launch into the world of comics.
That was a lot of fun.
Well, thanks for being here with us this morning. Have fun this weekend at the Comic Festival.
Yeah, thank you very much.
The book, as a reminder, is called The Spectacular Sisterhood of Superwoman. Such a good title. We've been speaking with the author, Hope Nicholson.